Ancient Egypt, a civilization that thrived for over 3 millennia, left behind a legacy of monumental architecture, religious practices, and political power that continues to captivate our imaginations. Central to this civilization were the pharaohs, god-kings who ruled with absolute power. Their reigns were marked by achievements in art, architecture, and warfare, but also by intrigue, betrayal, and mystery. This documentary explores the timeline of the pharaohs from the dawn of Egyptian civilization through its decline, offering a journey through history filled with stories of power, legacy, and the human experience. Long before the first pyramid was built, ancient Egypt began as small agricultural communities along the fertile banks of the Nile River. These early settlers laid the foundations for what would become one of the most enduring civilizations in history. The pre-dynastic period, spanning thousands of years, saw the development of distinct cultural practices, religious beliefs, and early forms of government. The unification of Upper and Lower Egypt around 3100 BCE marks the beginning of the early dynastic period. This era saw the emergence of the first pharaohs, who were not only political rulers but also considered divine intermediaries between the gods and the people. The first pharaoh, Narmer, is often credited with this unification, setting the stage for the era of the pharaohs. Narmer, also known as Menes, is believed to have been the first ruler to unify the two lands of Egypt, symbolized by the Narmer palette. This artifact, dating back to around 3100 BCE, depicts Narmer wearing the crowns of both Upper and Lower Egypt, signifying his dominion over the newly unified state. His reign marks the start of the First Dynasty and the beginning of recorded Egyptian history. During the early dynastic period, the pharaohs began to assert their power through monumental architecture and elaborate tombs, signaling the start of Egypt's fascination with the afterlife. This period also established the pharaoh as the Lord of the Two Lands, a title that would persist throughout Egypt's history. The Old Kingdom, often referred to as the Age of the Pyramids, is one of the most iconic periods in Egyptian history. It was during this time that the pharaohs established their power through the construction of monumental pyramids, the most famous of which is the Great Pyramid of Giza, built for Pharaoh Khufu. Pharaoh Djoser, who ruled during the Third Dynasty, is credited with commissioning the first pyramid in Egyptian history. The Step Pyramid at Saqqara, designed by his vizier Imhotep, was a revolutionary architectural achievement, marking the beginning of the Pyramid Age. This structure not only served as Djoser's tomb, but also as a symbol of his divine power. The Fourth Dynasty saw the construction of the most enduring symbols of Egypt, the Pyramids of Giza. Khufu, the second pharaoh of this dynasty, commissioned the Great Pyramid, the largest of all. His son, Khafre, built the second pyramid and the Great Sphinx, while Menkaure constructed the third, smaller pyramid. These monumental structures were more than just tombs. They were statements of absolute power and divine authority. The Old Kingdom also solidified the pharaoh's role as a divine ruler, the intermediary between the gods and the people. This belief was reinforced through state-sponsored religious practices, temple constructions, and the centralization of power around the pharaoh's person. However, as the Old Kingdom progressed, the immense resources needed to maintain such grandeur began to strain the state's economy and infrastructure. By the end of the Sixth Dynasty, the Old Kingdom began to unravel due to a combination of factors including environmental changes, economic strain, and internal dissent. The once mighty central authority weakened, leading to the fragmentation of Egypt into smaller competing states. This period of decline and chaos is known as the First Intermediate Period, where the unity of Egypt was temporarily lost. The First Intermediate Period is often characterized as a dark age in Egyptian history. Following the collapse of the Old Kingdom, Egypt fractured into numerous local dynasties, each vying for control. The central authority of the pharaoh was diminished, and the country experienced significant social and economic upheaval. During this period, the once unified Egypt was divided between rival rulers. The most powerful of these were the Heracleopolitan kings in the north and the Theban kings in the south. These local dynasties often clashed, seeking to extend their control over the fragmented nation. Despite the political instability, Egyptian culture and religious practices continued to flourish on a local level. The first intermediate period saw the decentralization of art and architecture, with regional styles emerging as local rulers sought to assert their legitimacy. This period also witnessed a greater emphasis on personal piety and the democratization of the afterlife, themes that would carry forward into the Middle Kingdom. The city of Thebes in Upper Egypt began to assert its dominance under the leadership of Intef I, marking the start of the 11th dynasty. The Theban rulers gradually expanded their control, culminating in the reunification of Egypt by Pharaoh Mentuhotep II, who established the Middle Kingdom. This reunification ended the first intermediate period and restored a sense of order and stability to the nation. The Middle Kingdom is often regarded as the classical age of ancient Egypt, marked by a revival of art, culture, and statecraft. After the reunification by Mentuhotep II, the 11th and 12th dynasties ushered in a period of stability, economic prosperity, and military expansion. Mentuhotep II's reign is best remembered for restoring order after the chaos of the first intermediate period. His successful reunification of Egypt set the stage for the Middle Kingdom's resurgence. He established Thebes as the religious and political capital, marking a shift in the cultural focus of the country. The 12th dynasty, founded by Amenemhat I, is considered the pinnacle of the Middle Kingdom. Amenemhat I moved the capital to Ichtawi, implementing administrative reforms that centralized power and improved governance across Egypt. His successor, Senusret I, continued these efforts, expanding Egypt's borders and fortifying its military presence. The reign of Senusret III further solidified Egypt's power, with military campaigns in Nubia and successful trade expeditions, bringing wealth and stability to the nation. The Middle Kingdom was a time of cultural flourishing, with advancements in literature, art, and architecture. Literature from this period, such as the Tale of Sinuhe, reflects a deepening complexity in storytelling and a more personal exploration of themes like loyalty, fate, and divine justice. In art, the realism of portraiture and the grandeur of temple and pyramid construction reflected the Middle Kingdom's emphasis on order, balance, and continuity. Despite its achievements, the Middle Kingdom eventually faced challenges from external threats, such as the growing power of the Hyksos in the north and internal strife leading to its decline. The 13th dynasty saw a weakening of central authority, with shorter reigns and less ambitious building projects, signaling the beginning of another period of fragmentation known as the Second Intermediate Period. The Second Intermediate Period was marked by the invasion and eventual domination of northern Egypt by the Hyksos, a Semitic people from the Levant. They introduced new technologies such as the horse-drawn chariot and advanced metalworking techniques, which they used to establish their own rule over Lower Egypt. Meanwhile, native Egyptian dynasties struggled to maintain control in the south, with Thebes emerging as the center of resistance against the Hyksos. The Theban rulers, including Seqenenre Tao, Kamose, and eventually Ahmose I, waged a series of military campaigns to expel the Hyksos and reclaim Egypt's unity. These wars of liberation were brutal and lengthy, but they ultimately culminated in the reunification of Egypt under Ahmose I, who founded the 18th dynasty and ushered in the New Kingdom. The New Kingdom is often referred to as Egypt's imperial age, a period of unprecedented wealth, military expansion, and cultural renaissance. This era saw the rise of some of Egypt's most famous pharaohs, including Hatshepsut, Thutmose III, Akhenaten, and Ramses II. Under their rule, Egypt expanded its borders to the south into Nubia and to the north into the Levant, establishing an empire that would dominate the ancient Near East. One of the most remarkable figures of the New Kingdom was Hatshepsut, a female pharaoh who ruled as a king in her own right. Her reign was marked by significant building projects, including her famous mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari. as well as successful trade expeditions such as the voyage to Punt. Hatshepsut's reign was one of peace and prosperity, but after her death, her legacy was nearly erased by her stepson, Thutmose III. Thutmose III, often called the Napoleon of Egypt, was one of the greatest military commanders in ancient history. During his reign, he conducted 17 military campaigns, expanding Egypt's empire to its greatest extent. His victories at Megiddo and elsewhere secured Egypt's dominance over its neighbours, and his reign brought immense wealth and stability to the kingdom. Akhenaten, originally known as Amenhotep IV, is one of the most enigmatic pharaohs of the New Kingdom. He is best known for his religious revolution, where he abandoned the traditional Egyptian pantheon in favour of worshipping the Aten, the sun disk. Akhenaten's reign saw the construction of a new capital city, Akhetaten, modern-day Amarna, and significant changes in art and culture. However, his radical reforms were highly controversial and were reversed soon after his death. Tutankhamun, the son of Akhenaten, ascended to the throne as a young boy and is most famous today for the discovery of his nearly intact tomb in the Valley of the Kings by Howard Carter in 1922. Although his reign was short and relatively uneventful, the treasures found in his tomb have provided invaluable insights into the wealth and culture of the New Kingdom. His reign also marked a return to traditional religious practices following the upheaval of Akhenaten's reforms. Ramses II, also known as Ramses the Great, ruled for over 66 years and is often regarded as the greatest pharaoh of the New Kingdom. He is known for his ambitious building projects, including the massive temples of Abu Simbel and his military campaigns, most notably the Battle of Kadesh against the Hittites. Ramses II's reign symbolized the height of Egypt's power and influence, and he is remembered as one of history's most powerful and celebrated rulers. Despite the grandeur of Ramses II's reign, the New Kingdom eventually fell into decline. A series of weak rulers, combined with economic difficulties, external pressures from the Sea Peoples and Libyans, and internal strife, led to the fragmentation of the empire. By the end of the 20th dynasty, Egypt had once again entered a period of decline, leading to the Third Intermediate Period, where the power of the pharaohs would be challenged by foreign invaders and internal divisions. The Third Intermediate Period was a time of political fragmentation and foreign influence in Egypt. The country was divided into competing kingdoms, with the Libyan dynasties in the north and the Kushite kings of Nubia in the south. This era saw the gradual erosion of the central authority of the pharaohs as foreign powers began to exert their influence over Egypt. During this period, Libyan chieftains established themselves as pharaohs in the north, ruling from the city of Tanis. These rulers, such as Sheshonq I, attempted to maintain Egypt's territorial integrity and cultural heritage, but they faced significant challenges from internal divisions and external threats. The fragmentation of power during the Third Intermediate Period allowed for the rise of local rulers, each vying for control over their respective regions. In the south, the Kushite kings of Nubia, who revered the ancient Egyptian traditions, began to expand their influence into Egypt. Led by rulers like Piye and Taharqa, the Nubian pharaohs sought to revive the glory of the New Kingdom by restoring temples, building monuments, and re-establishing the worship of Amun. Their rule, known as the 25th dynasty, represented a brief resurgence of centralized power and cultural revival in Egypt. The stability of the Nubian dynasty was short-lived, as the powerful Assyrian Empire began its conquest of Egypt. In 671 BCE, Assyrian forces under King Esarhaddon invaded and captured Memphis, forcing the Nubian pharaohs to retreat to Thebes. The Assyrians installed local rulers as vassals, marking the beginning of Egypt's increasing subjugation to foreign powers. The Assyrian conquest effectively ended the Third Intermediate Period and set the stage for the subsequent Late Period, where Egypt would struggle to regain its independence and former glory. Following the retreat of the Assyrians, the 26th dynasty, known as the Sate dynasty, emerged from the city of Sais in the Nile Delta. Pharaoh Psamtik I successfully reunified Egypt and initiated a period of revival and rebuilding. This period saw a renewed emphasis on Egyptian traditions, art and military strength as the Sayyid rulers sought to restore Egypt's independence and dignity. However, Egypt's resurgence under the Sayyid dynasty was short-lived as the mighty Persian Empire set its sights on the Nile Valley. In 525 BCE, Cambyses II, son of Cyrus the Great, defeated the Egyptian forces at the Battle of Pelusium and incorporated Egypt into the Persian Empire. This conquest marked the end of native Egyptian rule and the beginning of a new era of foreign domination under the Achaemenid Persians. Throughout the Persian period, Egypt became a battleground in the wider conflicts between the Persian Empire and the rising power of Greece. Egyptian leaders repeatedly attempted to revolt and reclaim independence, but these efforts were ultimately unsuccessful. The turning point came with the arrival of Alexander the Great in 332 BCE, who defeated the Persians and was welcomed as a liberator in Egypt. Alexander's conquest marked the end of the late period and the beginning of the Ptolemaic era, where Egypt would once again become a center of cultural and political influence, though under foreign rule. With the arrival of Alexander the Great, Egypt entered a new era of Hellenistic influence. Alexander's conquest was swift and decisive, and he was declared pharaoh in the ancient Egyptian tradition. In 331 BCE, he founded the city of Alexandria, which would become the new cultural and intellectual heart of Egypt, blending Greek and Egyptian traditions. After Alexander's death, his empire was divided among his generals, with Egypt falling to Ptolemy I Soter. The Ptolemaic dynasty he established would rule Egypt for nearly 300 years. This period was marked by a fusion of Greek and Egyptian culture, with the Ptolemaic rulers adopting many of the traditions of the pharaohs while also promoting Greek customs and institutions. The most famous of these was the Library of Alexandria, a symbol of the city's status as a beacon of knowledge and culture in the ancient world. Cleopatra VII, the last and most famous of the Ptolemaic rulers, was a shrewd and charismatic leader who sought to maintain Egypt's independence amid the rising power of Rome. Her relationships with Julius Caesar and later Mark Antony have become legendary, but they were also part of a broader strategy to protect Egypt from Roman annexation. Despite her efforts, Cleopatra's defeat at the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE and her subsequent suicide marked the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty and the absorption of Egypt into the Roman Empire. With the death of Cleopatra and the annexation of Egypt by Rome, the country became a province of the Roman Empire. Although Egypt continued to be a vital economic and cultural hub, the role of the pharaoh was replaced by Roman governors, and the ancient traditions of the pharaohs began to fade. The Roman period saw significant changes in Egyptian society, with the introduction of Roman law, the spread of Christianity, and the decline of the traditional polytheistic religion. As Christianity spread throughout the Roman Empire, Egypt's ancient religious traditions were increasingly suppressed. The temples that had once been centers of worship and culture were closed, and the practice of mummification and other traditional customs began to disappear. By the time of the Byzantine Empire, Egypt was predominantly Christian, and the ancient religion of the pharaohs had all but vanished. In 641 CE, Arab forces led by Ibn al-As captured Egypt, bringing an end to Byzantine rule and marking the beginning of Islamic Egypt. The ancient traditions of the pharaohs, which had endured for over 3 millennia, were now part of history. Yet the legacy of these pharaohs, their monumental achievements, and the civilization they built continue to inspire and intrigue us to this day. From the dawn of civilization to the fall of ancient traditions, the pharaohs of Egypt shaped not only their own world, but also left an indelible mark on the course of history. Their legacy, etched in stone and written on papyrus, has survived the test of time, continuing to captivate scholars and enthusiasts alike. The story of the Pharaohs is more than just a chronology of rulers. It is the story of a people, a culture, and a vision that sought to transcend mortality and touch the eternal. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the timeline of the Pharaohs, where history and myth, power and spirituality have intertwined to create one of the most fascinating civilizations the world has ever known.